So we're closing out another week here at the infamous project, and you can see our project 4 to 8 is up on the hoist here. So I was really hoping that by the end of this week, and for this video most importantly, that I'd be firing this thing up for the first time. I don't know if it's going to happen, so I'm documenting this now as my potential intro video for this episode because I've hit some roadblocks. Now, I did take a day off at the beginning of this week, went up to Toronto to go see that all original 1989 coupe. Needless to say, came back empty-handed with an empty trailer. If you haven't checked out that video, make sure that you do. So I was down a day and still managed to get quite a bit of work done to the car. Now the transmission is in and I came up with a few snags, guys. So the first snag I've hit was that I didn't realize that this actual shifter lever or automatic shift lever and the cable setup was different from a 4-cylinder to an automatic. That's ignorance on my part. I've always been busy stripping autos apart or converting them. I've never paid attention to installing them. So the good news is I went out back to Lemon Drop there and found out what I need. So I'll show you a clip of that.
Can I even get in here?
Yeah. You put your right foot down.
Oh, something going into my hip. You air conditioning. Oh.
This going on your video?
Yeah. Sure.
Trials and tribulations of building a fox body in the Canadian climate.
Got it. There we are. Who would have known I needed this whole bracket in assembly, but got it off. And if you guys are wondering why I was struggling so much, these U-clips totally snapped. So they were just spinning around and around. That's why I was laying on the ground. I was trying to get some vice grips on what was left in the material, and it wasn't working, but success, we got what we need. The second snag that I hit, which wasn't really too big of one, was this transmission cross member. I didn't have one from the donor car. I did have an extra one out in the C-can, so I grabbed it. However, it was set up for a 5-speed, but I went ahead and managed to grind off the spot welds and get everything lined up. All right, my light died, so we're back. So yeah, managed to get the transmission cross member all sorted out, so that is in place. And one thing when we were putting the transmission in, notice that this header is a little bit too close to the engine. So if you guys remember, there was a hole in the valve cover on the passenger side of this motor when I first got it. So the assumption here is the motor maybe rolled over on its side, hit something, put the hole in the valve cover, and bent the header while that happened. So it's about an inch off, and I'm gonna see hopefully today about if I can heat the header up by blowing torch heat in through the exit here in the collector area, and see if we can get a big pry bar and potentially bend it back. I don't have any stock headers laying around, unfortunately. Plus this one's all painted up all nice, which is a little bit of a burn, but can't expect projects to go 100%. All right.
You're the f***ing onion, you only got one shot at this. Another header, that's your best option right now.
On the flip side, it looks like the 4-cylinder starter I test fit that. There's an extra dog ear on it, but aside from that, it looks like it's going to work. And the tooth setup looks the same as the 5-liter, so most likely going to reuse the starter in this case. So earlier in the week, I did a bunch of rewiring. The O2 harness, the pigtails were cut off of the harness that came out of that donor car. So I managed to find some connectors from the 4-cylinder motor that got pulled out and managed to make things work. Also managed to make a nice custom little connector here off of a connector that I got from the 4-cylinder motor. And this one's always a pain, and this fits so nice. So I'm very happy with the way that that turned out. And fuel lines. Got the old fuel lines all pulled out. I still need to run the new nylon fuel lines up on the passenger side here. So there's a lot of work to do today. It's already lunchtime. So we'll see what I can get done in 5 hours here. So everything's done up in that engine bay, and fingers crossed everything is going to be good. And although these roadblocks underneath the car are a little bit challenging, that everything else will just kind of all come together. So as demotivating as some of this stuff can be, because it seems like they're pretty significant hurdles that need to get done in order to be able to bolt the rest of the things together, it is what it is. So, you know, sometimes when I'm feeling demotivated or I feel like I've hit that roadblock, I'll try and find something else to do to kind of just take my mind off of the frustrations and make myself feel a little productive. I pulled out the old fuel filter to get ready for the new one, and got these fuel line adapters. These are the OE ones that normally come up on the passenger side. So the nylon lines are run inside these rubber hoses, and then the nylon is on this, which goes to the up towards your fuel rails. So this is all cleaned up and ready to go for some nylon line, which will get all run and plumbed for this. But I did notice that the bracket for the fuel filter is actually pretty icky. So you can see the bracket here. It's pretty dirty, pretty ugly, and this is the perfect opportunity for me to take my mind off of things. I'm going to pull the bracket down and put it in the blasting cabinet, get it cleaned up, get it painted up. And I think a lot of you guys comment and you say that I'm thorough and my attention to detail, and you know, I do genuinely believe if you are working on something and just something so simple or so easy like that is available for you to do, go ahead and do it. You know, it's like fixing the saggy map pockets on the door panels that we did for the customer. I'm not going to charge them for this nitty-gritty stuff. You're there, you're doing it. It's just going to make life easier when you're playing with the hose clamp and everything else, that it's clean and it'll be easy to work with. And that's the infamous touch and the infamous difference. So I'm going to go ahead, pull that thing out, get it cleaned up, paint it up, get the new fuel filter in place, and then start focusing on some of these hurdles. Bolt. All right, so take this to the sandblasting cabinet over here. Look at how crusty this thing is. So now you can see this guy. There's a big bracket on the left-hand side here with an opening, and that's where the linkage goes to on the 5.0 cars, compared to this guy, which has a solid shift linkage arm right off there. So gonna have to do the same thing. Hopefully life will be a little bit easier trying to get those bolts out from the top. Then we can put this guy in, and then that'll allow us to actually hook up our shifting linkage cable. Now that we have our linkage assembly all installed, I'm going to go ahead and get this cable all hooked in. I'm going to have to take out the speedo cable here just so I can get the bracket and everything back on over here, but no big deal, just that one bolt. Then we'll get all of this sorted out and hopefully have our shifter linkage finally complete. Got it lubed up.
in the Put that on your video.
I'll just beep out the... It's like your YouTube claim to fame is fuel lines.
Stresses everybody out, man. Nobody wants to do it anymore. Making brake lines and shit.
All right, guys, it's almost the end of the day and got the fuel lines run, so that's all taken care of. They're just kind of tentatively in place. I'll go over that in a minute, but the last thing that's needed to try and start this car, to even see if the starter will engage or to see if the computer and everything's going to work, is I had no nuts for the torque converter. So I got into Savage mode and went over to the 4-cylinder motor that I pulled out, and I'm almost done pulling off the last nut. So they are the same thread. There's 4 of them on there, so I'm going for it. Easy access right through the starter hole down here. So I'm gonna go ahead, pull that last nut off and get the torque converted and get that torque converter bolted up, torqued down, everything else, and see what happens when we put power to the system and turn the key. All right, so you can see here, the nuts work. Gonna go ahead, check out what the torque spec is. We'll get everything turned over, everything bolted down, and see what happens. All right, so we got the torque converter bolted on, torqued down to spec. I'm going to leave the inspection plate off. There's things like the motor mounts and transmission mounts. I haven't torqued or tightened all them up yet, but I do want to get the car on the ground and see what happens power-wise. You can see our fuel lines are run here, looking just like factory, but nylon. So they run all the way along here, down the passenger side frame rail, all the way up there to the fuel filter area. We'll make sure that once everything is tested and it's working, that I'll put some rubberized hose clamps to go over them, make sure everything is nice and neat and tucked out of the way. So for now, it is open headers. There's no exhaust. I do need to replace the passenger side exhaust manifold or header. It's bent too much. There's no way. We tried heating it up. We tried getting a pry bar on there. There's no way to get it to where it needs to be. A friend of mine's got a set of headers for $100, so might pick those up unless somebody has just a passenger side factory header. Then I can get it cleaned up, get it painted to match, get it installed, and the exhaust can go on. But hey, most importantly, let's put this thing down on the ground and hook up the battery terminal, see if everything seems all right. So we do have our cruise control cable sitting here, the one that we passed through earlier. So this is going to have to get routed, as well as the TV cable or the kickdown cable for the automatic transmission. That guy is hiding right here. So just kind of make sure that they're out of the way. Now everything should be good here in terms of connections, fingers crossed. The ground strap and everything was hooked up on the firewall. So that's a really important one, guys. Don't forget your ground strap. There's so many times where I've been putting stuff back together and then you wonder why things don't run or they're not running properly. And that ground strap is a critical component. Here the computer is just kind of plugged in and sitting in the kick panel. Nothing else. Interior lights on. Okay, gauges. I definitely don't hear a fuel pump. Good news is the 4-cylinder starter does work, despite it having that extra dog ear. Seems to turn things over just fine. All right, so there's definitely no fuel happening here. So hustled hard today, got a lot done. I probably didn't even think I was going to get this far. So everything aside from that passenger side header, which caused some grief. So that guy's going to have to come off and get replaced. But other than that, we got our shifter linkage problem sorted out. We got our fuel lines run, got the transmission cross member all done. And most importantly, everything in the engine bay is looking sweet. So unfortunately, got it to a position where we could see if it would start, and it won't. So it just turns over. I haven't tested for spark, but I know there's no fuel, and it doesn't sound like there's a fuel pump engaging. So I'm gonna have to check over all of the wiring and see what's going on. Who knows? All right, guys. So I can't write or come up with this stuff. I am pretty creative. I guess I probably could have come up with this, but I didn't plan it this way. I was busy cleaning up all of the tools along the back shelf there, and you know, no fuel pump noise. Makes you kind of think, well, fuel pump relay. So I checked underneath the seat here, and the relay harness is under the seat, but there's no relay. And needless to say, I went out and grabbed a relay from another harness I had out in the sea can, and gonna try plugging it in. So most likely the fuel pump is integrated with the 4-cylinder harness. So I'm gonna try this and see if we get fuel pump noise. The cover is on there. Come on. There we go. Whew. Relay is plugged in. Let's see if we hear a fuel pump.